Hello, everybody. Once again, my name is Miguel Valenzuela. Welcome to Creative Thinkers. As always, we bring you somebody very special. Today, we have an abstract artist. Her name is Rhonda Dore. Rhonda, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm super excited to talk to you because you have some amazing work, first of all, but you've done a whole bunch of other things. And we're going to hit upon all of this because we want to talk a little bit about creativity. So I actually want to start by one of the things that you mentioned when we had our conversation the other day. You mentioned that when you were growing up, you were kind of in a battle of sorts. Can you expand on that? Because I think a lot of people somehow get into a predicament like that.
I think a lot of people do.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, I grew up in a family that my parents were children of the Depression. Mm-hmm. They had been through the trauma of war. Wow. They wanted certainty. Mm-hmm. And something like the arts was not, it was great to play with, but that was not a career.
So certainty for them was, certainty, you're going to get a degree,
paycheck, benefits, retirement fund, all those things. And yes, my dad, unlike most of the men of his time, mm-hmm. said to me, you will not be a teacher, and you will not be a secretary, and you will not be a nurse. You're going to be a lawyer or pediatrician. You know, I mean, that was not what most dads in the 60s were doing with their kids. But those things didn't appeal to me from a really early age. You know, all children draw, mm-hmm. and we reach an age about 8 where we stop drawing for sheer pleasure and mm-hmm. we start trying to make it look like something and look totally realistic. Mm-hmm. And I was like all kids, I wanted to do that. And I remember my dad saying, well, you know, people are born with that kind of talent and knowledge. You can't just, it won't just happen.
Right. So how did you feel as a young person kind of getting this talk from your dad that was telling you this? And there was like an inside passion, I'm sure, that you had. Yeah. How did you feel when that happened?
Well, disappointed, because I believed him. Mm-hmm. And I just worshipped artists. I mean, I had one person in my family who could draw really well. I'd mm-hmm. follow him around. Oh, wow. Draw the bird, draw that, you know. And later in school, I used to just admire the artists so much. And in my first career, which was advertising, we had a lot of illustrators mm-hmm. and graphic designers. And I used to look at their hands and think, something's in there that I don't have.
Really? That's super cool. But you know what's interesting is, and let's talk a little bit about your career, because your career was in advertising, but specifically in writing copy. Now, I told you a story. The story is that I met my friend's daughter, and my friend's daughter said, I want to be a copywriter, and I immediately jumped into that little C that appears on the bottom corner of products, like a trademark, right? And she said, oh no, you got it all wrong. I want to be a copywriter, write copy. I'm like, got it. What exactly does that mean? Because I'm sure a lot of people don't really even understand what that means. What are you writing?
We are the professionals who write on demand mm-hmm. for websites, television commercials, brochures, any kind of advertising. Now it's expanded to social media. Mm-hmm. We write the words that you as customers experience, product labeling, all those things.
What's that experience like? Because a lot of people think, I guess, magically those words appear somewhere, but that's not really how it works. How does one get to that point? Do people come and seek out these kinds of words, this knowledge from you guys? Or you guys, when you're working at the advertisement agency, how does one initiate this process? For example, I have a product. My product is selling coffee, for example. Mm-hmm. Where do we begin?
Well, we begin by figuring out what problem you have. If you're launching a new brand, let's say, nobody knows it, or mm-hmm. you're an established brand, but you have a new offshoot and you want people to learn about it. The clients will bring us a challenge. Mm-hmm. And then what we do, what we did in our agency is we had a strategist study that, but they also, most importantly, studied the potential customers for that product. Because we're not really writing for an audience that is our client. Mm-hmm. We're writing to communicate for them with the customer. So we have to understand what motivates the customers, what makes them happy, what makes them feel like, oh, this company gets me.
And that company, for example, my coffee company, would come in and say, hey, you know what? My customer is going to be a younger audience.
Right.
So the people that work with you would have to analyze who the audience is, being a younger person,
Yes.
and have to come up with something like that?
Yes.
And what would they come up with? Like the whole story? Would they come up with just a phrase? Do you guys do jingles? What do you guys do exactly?
People
It's a
don't
lot of
much do
different stuff,
jingles
right?
anymore because they're pretty bad, but some are funny. But yeah, it's up to the writers and the artists, the graphic designers, to figure out, all that creative department figures out what to do. And clients really get good work when they kind of take the handcuffs off us, let us study, and come back to them with something. And I was trying to think. I have a great example from my teaching days that I can tell you about. I taught a senior level advertising class in which I split them randomly in two, and they compete against each other.
Oh,
and
wow.
make campaigns.
Competition is good.
Competition's good.
Yeah.
And their client that semester was Insomnia Cookies. They are a cookie store that was founded by a kid in college because late at night he wanted something good to eat.
Right.
Nothing was open. So he started delivering out of his dorm room to people. So you'll find one on North Mesa, right near UTEP.
Oh, I think I have seen it,
My students went out and did some research and discovered, their target audience is students like us. But the people we talked to were aware of the company. They would order them because they open at like 10 p.m. and are open till like 4 a.m. or something.
No wonder. I think I've been there earlier and they're not open.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
And they will, if there's a group together, great, we'll order cookies. But if I'm by myself, I feel kind of like a loser having to have a cookie at 2 a.m.
Right.
I feel
so what did you do?
So what they did was they thought through it, and they also found that these students were doing their best, most creative work after 10 p.m. During those hours when it's open, because the demands of work and homework and little sisters and brothers and all that are done.
Right.
And that's when they can bloom and create the things they want to. So they came up with a tagline called "Feed Your Night Brain."
Oh, wow.
Smart
I
kid.
love it already.
And with one of the executions, they had a lot of things. They had, TV and radio and social media and contests. They came up with a lot. But the thing I admired most that they came up with is they thought up a freeway billboard that during the day was plain white and said, "Daytime is boring." It just had the logo.
That's it?
That's it. But when the sun went down, the billboard converted to neon inks, fluorescent neon inks, and black lights. And they had put whole galaxies printed in black light, like a black light poster.
Right.
And it said, "Feed your night brain."
So the people, when they travel, they would see the difference between the plain one, when contrasted against the night one, which was completely different, but it was the same ad.
Yeah.
So creativity is important, right?
Yes.
It's something that what we talked about was creativity being part of everything that we are, almost like our essence. What is creativity to you?
It's the most wonderful addiction that I've ever had. I just
In which way?
love it. Well,
explain it to the people watching, because a lot of people have this creativity within them. They just don't see that they have it there. It's almost like locked up in this little box.
Yeah.
So what is it to you? Like what are these ideas and things that creativity is?
Well, I've done it for a very long time, but for me, the essence of that would be when I'm working,
whether it be on a painting or an ad
writing
campaign.
or anything that's creative, you feel a moment when you release the cares of this world. You basically let go and reach like a different state and time goes by, you don't know it. You're just, it's an odd feeling. You're very present, but you're also not there.
Right.
And at some point, that state will break and you kind of like wake up and look at what you've done, and it's almost like you don't even know how that happened, but it happened.
So like an epiphany of sorts?
It is, I think. I think it's a flow that a lot of people call it that, and I can see that. And there's a painter named Gillian Pedersen Cragg, and she talks about that too, that you are not alone making this happen.
So is it like an energy?
It is. It is, to me, partly like she says, we are visited as artists. We're not entirely driving the bus.
Wow.
You have to be open to that, and you have to let go. And all of us, especially I think people who are afraid to try a little something creative, we all have an editor voice in our heads that will say horrible things to us. If we said those things to someone else, they'd never speak to us again.
Right, that's true. Because we're our harshest critic.
We are, and it will say things to you like, that's stupid. Don't do that. That's ugly.
But how do we get to that point? Do you think that it may be society? Do you think it was our upbringing? Do you think it's our parents?
I think it's human nature. I think it's human nature trying to protect us, because in advertising and in art and a lot of places where there is a breakthrough involved, your very old DNA is trying to protect you. It doesn't want you to walk into the forest where there could be a tiger. So it's like, don't go there. No, don't do that.
And why is it important to get beyond that?
Because that's where all the good work comes from. If you're too safe, people have seen that before. It's boring. It doesn't communicate. It doesn't connect really well. And for me, creativity has always been about connection and helping other people.
Connection to the energy, or connection to other things?
Connection to other people, that they see something or read something or feel something that makes their world better.
And I think that's one of the things that you try to do with your work.
It is.
So these works are abstracted works. So at some point, I'm assuming that you were creating more realistic work, and then you kind of went away from that. And what is it exactly you're trying to bring across by creating these?
I'm still creating realistic work, but I do it just for myself. I get up every morning and draw something, because y'all, you can learn to draw.
Oh, absolutely,
You can
100%.
learn to draw. My father was wrong. And it's like...
Because I think it's, for me anyways, and sorry for interrupting you, for me it is more of a technical ability.
It is.
The artistry comes when you realize what your aesthetic is.
Right.
I didn't really comprehend the concept of aesthetic until I was in grad school. I had already taken 10,000 art classes, and I'm exaggerating a little bit, but I took a lot of art classes: drawing, painting, sculpture, design, metalsmithing. I mean, you name it, I took it. But I didn't really understand my aesthetic until I was in grad school. And one of the things that clicked was that one of my professors told me, I go, I'm not really understanding what you mean by my aesthetic. She's all, what I want to know is what is beautiful to you, because it comes from the heart. It doesn't come from a flower that you see. That has its own aesthetic. It comes from within you. And it took me a couple of years to figure out what that aesthetic was. What is your aesthetic in these pieces?
I would love, the world is not an easy place.
It isn't.
And all of us know people struggling with illness or depression or just grief or health challenges. There's so many things.
Absolutely, every day. And it doesn't matter age.
Doesn't matter. Also, then there are other little things that get us, like a flat tire on your way to work, or your boss is mad and says something ugly to you. Or, things.
And then sometimes it progressively gets worse.
It can get worse.
So these are pieces that help us with that?
Well, that's my hope and prayer. That I always tell people, I'm kind of painting for someone who has had a really crummy day, who's had gotten a parking ticket and the school called and said, come get your child, he's got a fever and you get a flat tire on the way. I mean, it's just terrible.
Right.
You know, these little bitty things can lay you low.
Absolutely.
And I kind of have a picture in my mind of this person struggling up a set of stairs with a overfilled grocery bag, and they've just had it. And at the top of the stairs will be a piece of work that when they lift their eyes, there will be color that lifts them a little bit away from all that and maybe stops them and makes them just sink into it and look for a little while. And abstract art asks us to feel a mood, I believe.
Emotion.
It's not, oh, look, I see a monkey riding on a donkey and it's got a feather. It's not that.
Right.
It is.
It's open to interpretation. That's one of the things that I absolutely love about abstract work.
Yeah, I do too. It's a mood and a feeling. And I hope that that feeling connects with them and makes them remember, okay, but you know what? My child is beautiful. And I'm going to be happy about that. Nobody in my house is in jail.
Right.
Hooray. You know, there are things to feel deep joy about in this life, as well as the challenges. And that deep joy is just as important to remember to feel as anything.
And when you start these works, for example, let's look at that one because it's beautifully done. I really love the colors.
Thank you.
And I love the way it contrasts against the background. It's almost like it has this kind of ease about the back, and then it has this complexity about the foreground, which absolutely allows us to kind of be in two places at one time. How do you start these? How do you get to this point? Do you look at a still life like some flowers?
Sometimes about halfway through I might do that. This is from a series called Amsterdam Market that I'm still working on. It's about, you know, those show flowers that go through the worldwide markets that eventually come to florists who make beautiful things. They're like the thoroughbred racehorses of the flower world.
Right.
And I find that fascinating. And people have painted flowers forever. I want to paint them, but I want to paint the feeling of them, the magic of them, the line of them more so than the literal flower. And the way I start these, honestly, is not caring at all. I play and throw things down and just don't care and really make it very intuitive and kind of quick. And then you have to kind of step back and see what you have.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, what do I have? And then it's like call and response a bit. And there usually comes a point where I get a little frustrated and
Doesn't every artist?
Yeah, getting stuck is part of it. And it's just you have to accept that and just know the only way to fix that is keep going. Just keep going.
You know, one of the interesting things that you mentioned was, you know, this kind of give and take. So the way that I'm interpreting that is that there is a dialogue that is happening between you and the painting.
Yeah.
But what really interests me is the fact that that dialogue will then continue with the viewer, whatever their situation is.
That's what
Are you relaying a specific message in your pieces? Or is it all left to interpretation?
Well, it can be anything anyone wants, but my message is, I have on my website, I'm sending you a signal. Remember, there are good things. Don't forget. Because no matter how awful, and I've been through awful, you don't get to my age without being through awful. I've been through cancer twice.
Wow.
You know, things have happened. My family broke up. I mean, there have been, everyone I know suffers some way. But there is also wonder in the world and beauty and gratitude, and you have to tune your radio dial in there to see it. I kind of want to tell people, okay, winter's coming. If you're like an artist, when we get that first frost, go out when the sun comes up. There'll be diamonds in the trees.
Yeah.
Be happy about that. And it doesn't mean you're being not mindful of all the other things in the world, but we need some relief from those other things.
Now, you talk a lot about coming from a place that doesn't have a lot of relief. You said also that you have had and battled cancer. Is that where this is coming from these places that are not the most positive, not the brightest, and trying to get yourself out from those places and then probably relaying that message to the viewer?
I think internally I love being filled with joy. Who doesn't?
Right.
And I mine that to bring it to people because, yeah, I mean, I have felt that horrible solitary feeling of wondering if you're going to live or die, or it's a terrible loneliness that you can feel. And I can't fix that.
Right.
I cannot fix that for the world. But my faith helped me tremendously. God saw me out of those places. And Sunday school words, God is good, God is love. We all learned that in Sunday school. I believe that, and I'm trying to share some.
So you're doing that through these little, I would say, not because they're grains of sand, but everybody adds their little grains of sand to the world, right?
What they bring to these makes them complete. I really believe that. What they can take from this that helps them nourish themselves makes this complete.
That's one of the things that I find really compelling, is that a lot of people don't really understand the power of art. Art is creativity.
It is.
What do you think art brings to the people aside from what your specific pieces are bringing?
I think it's a never-ending journey of beauty and thought and contemplation. Oh, it's so many things. Some of my family lives up near Washington, D.C., so for Thanksgiving, we were up there, and I took a day and went to the Smithsonian Museum of American Art. And it's housed in the same building as National Portrait Gallery. I could have spent 3 days in there. I had about 3 hours, but the feeling of walking past all that mastery, all that beauty, all that thought-provoking craftsmanship and gorgeousness, it's something that deeply moves me. My family doesn't like to go with me to museums because at some point I will burst into tears, but they know.
But you know what's interesting is I think a lot of people, it may move you because you have a deeper understanding of what this thing called art is. But I think one of the main reasons why it doesn't move others is because of lack of education. They simply just don't understand. And that's kind of what we're trying to do through this show. We're trying to educate people on the importance of art. One of the words that you used earlier was happiness. It makes you happy. Art really does make us happy. It's interesting that we don't take advantage of this thing called art more. The people kind of shy away from it because they simply just don't understand. How can people get more connected to this idea of art?
Take yourself on a date to the El Paso Museum of Art. Just go. Don't expect to find a world revelation that changes your life. Just go. Just look at little things if you want. Look at how the brushstrokes worked. Look at who a person chose to paint. There's a painting in our collection by George Lukes, and it's of the chef at Lu Chow's, the cook at Lu Chow's, I think.
I don't think I've ever seen that one.
He painted somebody who was back in the steamy kitchen, not the rich guy. And it's a fabulous painting, full of character. Just go. Once in a while, just go. And expose yourself to that wonder. And don't press yourself to try to see something magnificent. Just ease off on yourself and enjoy it. Even if you just enjoy the color yellow, enjoy it.
And you know what's beautiful is that a lot of people limit themselves as well because they think that art only exists in a museum setting.
Right.
Don't limit yourself by thinking that I have to wait to go to Paris to look at the Mona Lisa and only then will I have that connection. No.
Every time I've been to Las Vegas, you see people standing in line to get into the Bellagio Museum and you're like, where do y'all live? Cincinnati? Go to the museum.
Yeah.
Go down the street. There's going to be a gallery or a little coffee shop and somebody's made something you should see.
Yeah, and not just that. you just mentioned the coffee shop. You can go into the coffee shop and see the artistry that's being created inside your mug.
Right.
You can go to a restaurant and see the artistry being created within that dish.
Yeah.
So art exists all around us in many ways. We can see it everywhere. What is one thing that has really inspired you to do what you do, and what has inspired you throughout your life? Is there a work of art, an artist, a style, a person?
There are several. I'm a big fan of Gustav Klimt.
Ooh, love him. Love the use of gold, as I see there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like it. His student Egon Schiele, the line, he did figurative work, very controversial, but the line work he did was magnificent. In today's world, there's a painter who just died in 2021, Hung Liu from China.
Never heard of him.
Oh, she.
Oh,
she
okay.
painted disadvantaged Chinese, but not in a way that you would expect.
Wow.
For example, she found a collection of photos of 15, 16-year-old girls who were concubines.
Oh, wow.
Basically victims. She painted the most magnificent portraiture of them I have ever seen.
Beautiful.
Multi-layered and magic. And it's a contrast of beauty and sadness that is immense and beautiful. There's an Australian painter named Jo Bertini who does abstracted landscapes, and her color is just out there. I love it. So there are a lot of painters I look to.
So from your point of view, do you think it has a lot to do with perspective?
Oh,
just the way that we interpret what we're seeing.
Yes,
how
because we're all
these things.
different. So we're all going to experience it differently. It will call to a different part of us.
Yeah, and I think that the people, when they start opening themselves up to these new ideas and these new concepts, they will see a beautiful world that exists out there.
Yes.
I think one of the things that's missing is just us allowing ourselves to be put into predicaments that will help us see the world in a different way.
I agree.
Yeah. We're running very short on time.
Okay.
I wanted to thank you, Rhonda, for taking your time out, bringing us this beautiful work, and giving us an idea of who you are. It's very important for our viewers to understand people and how creative they are and how they change the world by creating these works of art.
Thank you very much.
I hope you had a good time. Rhonda, how do people get a hold of you?
Well, they can find me at my website. It's rhondadore.com, and it's spelled RHONDADORE.com.
Beautiful. Hopefully lots of people contact you.
That'd be great.
Awesome. Thank you. And I wanted to thank all of our viewers out there. Again, my name is Miguel Valenzuela. You guys are watching Creative Thinkers. If you guys need to contact me, again, my email is mvalen31@epcc.edu. Another place where you can watch our show is on YouTube under EPCC-TV/Creative Thinkers or on channel 13.2. Thank you very much for joining us. Again, we keep bringing you guys very interesting and creative guests. Join us next time.